Welcome back, y'all. It is time for the next chapter in Halloween Vibes, a Halloween novella in my Eternal Rest Bed and Breakfast Paranormal Cozy Mysteries. Let's dive in. Chapter 6. Like I said, I've been putting up with this for half an hour. Danny shook his head. No sleep, no caffeine, and two suspects who refuse to calm down. Even Bailey is a suspect? Sage asked. Why would she have killed Joe? Danny spread his hands. His girlfriend, Gloria Johnson, says she and Joe had a fight last night, and he stormed out of her house around 9 o'clock. He wound up at Bailey Catrice's house, but she swears she shut the door in his face, then went to bed. Oh-ho! Sage sounded thoroughly amused. So, he fought with his current girlfriend and thought he'd find solace from the ex. No wonder they're both suspects. And I'm guessing neither has an alibi? Emily asked. Danny gave Emily a tight smile. Of course not. That would make things too easy. To make it even less easy for you, Emily said, I have two suspects for you to add to your list. Another one of Joe's ex-girlfriends, Rebecca Northrup, is staying at Eternal Rest. She, her husband Wyatt, and the rest of their group ran into Joe last night after dinner, and it wasn't a positive encounter from what I understand. Then, around 10 last night, Rebecca and Wyatt snuck out of Eternal Rest, and they didn't get back until nearly 2 o'clock this morning. There was a note of pride in Danny's voice as he said, Good sleuthing, Emily. I'll come by Eternal Rest and talk to them later, if they'll still be there. They're staying through tomorrow. Like everyone else in this town, they'll be coming here tonight for tricks and treats on the town square. Assuming, Danny said ominously, this pumpkin patch gets cleaned up in time. The killer made a real mess. It's ironic that both Hilltop Cemetery's pumpkin patch and the town's pumpkin patch were both scenes of the slashing last night, Sage said thoughtfully. Yeah, it caused some hilarious confusion this morning, Trevor said, winking at Emily. You can joke about it all you want, but it's possible the killer decided to get in some practice at the cemetery before tracking down Joe. Emily frowned, wondering again if her knife had been involved in one or both incidents. Danny was already pulling out his pen and notebook. What exactly happened at the cemetery? Emily briefly told him about Reed's ruined fall scene. To her surprise, Danny found the details important enough to jot down in his notebook. He seemed to sense Emily's feelings because he said simply, The two could be related. Even if they're not, someone vandalized the city's display in the cemetery, and that's a crime too. Reed thinks it was teenagers who snuck in looking for Halloween mischief, Emily said. I'll take any information I can get that might have a tie to this murder. Danny snapped his notebook shut and looked at Emily. We don't have a lot of clues, not even the murder weapon. Emily sighed. I'm missing one of my kitchen knives. She raised her hands defensively. However, it's entirely possible it got misplaced during yesterday's pumpkin carving party. Danny's lips compressed into a tight line. Let's hope it's just misplaced. Well, we're going to ask Joe what he knows, so we'll keep you posted on anything we learn, Sage said. She began walking up the gazebo steps, clearly eager to get in touch with Joe's ghost. I'd much rather be talking to a ghost than to all these girlfriends, Danny said. Good luck. Danny wandered back toward the crime scene as Emily and Trevor followed Sage up the steps. Unlike some members of Oak Hill's police department, Danny was a firm believer in the paranormal. Not only did he think ghosts existed, but he had full confidence in Sage's ability to communicate with them. The shouting was still going on, and before Emily sat down on the wooden floor of the gazebo, she glanced over at the two women again. A wiry man with long blonde hair was running up to them, and he boldly stepped between the women. He seemed to be saying something, and the shouting died down. Thank you, Emily whispered in the man's direction. It would be helpful to have some peace and quiet for the seance. Trevor and Sage were already sitting cross-legged on the floor, and Emily joined them. The three of them formed a loose circle, and Sage began to unpack the contents of her bag in the middle of the group. She carefully laid out a few sheets of blank paper, a pencil, a bell, a purple 7-day candle, and a silver dollar. No point lighting the candle since it's broad daylight, Sage said, more to herself than her companions. It will be too difficult to see the flame. Sage gave herself a little shake, then sat up straighter. Her eyelids drooped, and she began to speak in a low monotone. Joe Carruthers, I know you're here. I felt your presence this morning. You and I never met, but I'm sure you've heard of me. I'm the person in Oak Hill who can talk to people like you. Why don't you come have a chat with us? Emily didn't have Sage's psychic skills, but she was learning to detect the subtle shifts in the atmosphere that hinted at the presence of a ghost. The feeling in the square was unchanged, though, and Sage continued calling out to Joe. I know you want answers, Joe. Sage's monotone shifted into a more soothing intonation. If you tell us what you know, maybe we can help you get those answers. Who killed you? And why? Please, come tell us so you can get some closure. Emily, Sage, and Trevor all sat silently. Emily's eyes were staring blankly at the unlit candle in front of her, and after a few minutes, she heard Sage huff out a breath. He's nearby, but he's not close enough to communicate. I think he's afraid. Can't blame the guy, Trevor said. His girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend are over there arguing with each other about him. The women were behind Emily, and she took Trevor's word for it that they were still arguing. The shouting, at least, hadn't started up again. Good point, Sage said. I think that's exactly why he's hesitating. Let's try to reassure him, shall we? Her eyelids slid half-closed again, and she said, Joe, I know you don't want any part of the drama happening over there with Bailey and your girlfriend. Sorry, I don't remember what Danny called her, but those women aren't like me. They can't sense your presence. It's safe for you to come over here and talk to me. They won't even know you're here. This time, Emily did sense a shift in the atmosphere. It was a slightly chilly morning, but she had been warm enough in her long-sleeved shirt. But as Sage continued calling to Joe, the temperature in the gazebo steadily fell until Emily shivered and wrapped her arms around herself. Thank you for joining us, Joe, Sage said, while Emily knew a lot of people who would be frightened at the idea of a ghost being nearby. Sage always viewed it as a mere conversation between two people, even though one of them didn't have a body anymore. Joe, you can send your thoughts to me, or you can use the tools here in the center of our circle to communicate, Sage said, sounding slightly like a teacher giving her class instructions. You can ring that bell, push or flip the silver dollar, or you can control my hand to write on the paper. Do you understand? An icy breeze caressed Emily's face. Oh, Sage asked. I just got a blast of cold air on my face. Emily raised her hands to her cheeks. We'll take that as a yes, then. Joe, do you know who killed you? After a quiet moment, Trevor gasped. The cold air is in my face this time. Sage laughed quietly. I think he's using the two of you to answer yes or no questions. Emily represents yes, and you, Trevor, are no. Sage gazed upward. Am I right, Joe? In answer, another wave of cold air washed over Emily. That's a yes, she confirmed. Well done, Joe. You're very clever. So, you don't know who killed you. That's okay. The person probably snuck up behind you. Another yes, Emily said as a chilly breeze sent goosebumps up her arms. What can you tell us about your killer? Sage asked. There was a long pause, then Sage asked, Trevor? Nothing, Trevor said. You didn't ask him a yes or no question, Emily pointed out. Oh, right. Sorry, Joe. Let's start with this. Do you have any information about your killer? Any clues that could help us? That did it, Emily said. She rubbed her arms briskly, and when she exhaled, she could see her breath hanging in the air. Wow, it's really freezing over on your side of the circle, Trevor commented. But we're getting answers. We're glad to know you do have information that can help us, Sage said. Do you want to try channeling the information through me? You just need to focus on me, like we're having a really intense conversation. Emily turned her head toward Sage, closely watching her face and posture for any signs that she was locked in communication with Joe. Instead, Sage's expression slowly turned to one of impatience. Joe might have figured out how to send cold waves of air, but communicating thoughts was apparently a spectral skill he had yet to learn. Of course, Emily reminded herself, the guy had only been a ghost for a matter of hours. It took time, she knew, for the dead to get the hang of things. Focus hard, Joe, Sage encouraged. Trevor and Emily are happy to loan you some energy. You can draw from them if you need the boost to talk to me. Trevor's face screwed up in distaste, and Emily knew she had a similar expression. Even though it wasn't harmful for a ghost to treat a person like a sort of battery, it still made Emily feel mildly violated. In fact, she realized, it was similar to how she'd felt when she discovered the slashed pumpkins the night before. Someone had come into her space and done something unkind. But Joe isn't being unkind, she told herself firmly. Sage invited him, and Trevor and I are here to help the two of them communicate. Emily closed her eyes and concentrated on giving off a helpful, friendly vibe. A woman's voice cut into her efforts. Oh, look! They're doing a seance scene for Halloween. Boy, Oak Hill goes all out, don't they? I didn't know they hired actors to do spooky little vignettes. Emily, Sage, and Trevor all turned to look in the direction the voice was coming from. An older couple stood there, and the woman had her phone raised to take a photo of the seance. Emily wasn't sure whether she should feel amused or annoyed by the intrusion. Sage apparently saw the whole thing as good marketing. She smiled widely, produced a business card, and waved the couple over. Come take this. I'm offering a Halloween special. I'll give you 13% off if you come see me this afternoon at Seeing Beyond. The man came up the gazebo steps and took the card, a skeptical look on his face. Thanks? And, Sage added, I'll tell you why your grandmother is standing behind you, asking what happened to her mixing spoons. The man's hand froze halfway to tucking the card into his jacket pocket. His face paled, and behind him, his wife laughed heartily. Oh, I definitely want to hear Gammy's side of that story. We'll stop by after we finish our antique shopping. I was just a kid. I thought they were toys, the man muttered as he turned and shuffled down the stairs. Once the couple had walked away, Sage's smile faded. Let's get back to work. Joe, keep focusing. Emily had just closed her eyes in concentration when she breathed in a faint floral smell. Roses, she murmured. But that can't be right because roses don't bloom in the fall. Nevertheless, the smell grew stronger. It was definitely the scent of roses. The smell disappeared abruptly as Sage suddenly yelled, She's coming! Emily's eyes snapped open. Who's coming? Sage blinked a few times, then shook her head. I don't know. Joe shouted it at me, and I was just repeating it. He took off. His presence feels really distant now. The question, Trevor said, is which she did he mean? He pointed his chin in the direction of the sidewalk that led to the gazebo. Emily turned and saw the two women who had been fighting striding toward them, and on their heels was Rebecca. So that is it for Chapter 6. Head on to the next video for Chapter 7.